Previously on Cycle 99. An email notification arrived in the inbox of Bertold Spitz. That night, he sat on the edge of his young daughter's bed and presented her with her first throwing knife.
You will choose 8 heroes for this story.
Poist Papa, employed by the matriarch of the Worthsums, a family of wannabe American aristocrats, Higgs had just turned 21, and on his 21st birthday, his father had ordered, Higgs to complete the Worthsome rite of passage. Higgs' first barely intelligible word was lightning, because that is what he felt in his brain and his bones every day of his life. But the cold, clear water hit their damaged pupil like a lightning strike, and Thatch fell instantly unconscious. Zeppelin was not the most efficient way to travel, neither for speed nor for cost. But it had a certain magic about it, and that was thought to be quintessential if one wanted to find the lost island. Then, the life of Horace Worthsome Jr. comes into focus. Episode 3. Pink Balloon Pirate Ship. Cycle 99 is a swashbuckling adventure story about extinction, magic, and hope where you design the characters. Chapters release every Tuesday. Visit patreon.com/pitchpine productions for free to vote on chapter and character polls. This story is family-friendly, but may contain occasional strong language and mild violence. Welcome aboard the airship Bannockburn. The Bannockburn rocked gently from side to side as Higgs rested his back on the rickety wooden bed. He had a cabin to himself, courtesy of his family's investments into the venture, and was grateful for the privacy. Lottie and Monty had deposited him and his luggage here, and then absconded to explore the airship. This would be Lottie's last chance to see it before the ship set sail and she was relegated back to the normal obligations of being Charlotte Elizabeth Worthsome. The interior of the cabin was constructed from patchwork planks of wood, some pale and new, recently revarnished, others dark and wavy, brine-worn. The bed came equipped with scratchy linens and a lumpy pillow, which would do Higgs no favors, but he was enjoying being horizontal. He rolled to the side, drawing his knees up to his chest the way he used to do when he snuck into Lottie's bed as a young child and tried not to wake her. Set into the wall on his right, sunlight shot wavering beams through the porthole, illuminating the cabin's dust motes in their eternal dance. Higgs felt his landside life already slipping away, and his mind began to tug at his father's leash like the Bannockburn pulling against her mooring in the gentle winds. He drifted, and his thoughts caught on the mysterious waltz of the dust particles. For the first time in a long time, he imagined them like the particles of the Large Hadron Collider, all the way in Switzerland, a place where Higgs had never been, though he longed for the chance to someday see it. A hint, but more than you've ever had before, at the caliber of Higgs's dreams. Beyond the porthole, the rest of the airship dock stood at attention, set against the Pacific Northwest's cliffs. Airships were anchored, hovering just above the docks, parked next to docking towers, small platforms with gangway ladders and, if they were particularly fancy and accessible, elevators to carry people and luggage up to the decks of the ships. Regular old naval vessels were docked below them for economy of space, moored in the shadows of the behemoth dirigibles. 2 bays down, Higgs squinted to make out an airship about to take off. A sky sailor, their features indistinct at this distance, cast off the mooring lines and kicked their foot against the docking platform, then scrabbled up the side of the balloon via the rigging, perhaps to check something. The airship lurched, the engines kicked in, and off she went. That would be Higgs soon, not the young fellow monkeying across the rigging. Higgs would leave that to his more agile compatriots. But against his better judgment, Higgs would be setting off on his own journey very soon. He could feel the belly of the beast above him, the airship's great helium-filled interior. The Bannockburn and her sister ships were unlike the early German Zeppelins, with the crew compartment stuck to the balloon's underbelly like a suckerfish to a whale shark. Modern constructions kept the conical dirigible balloons, but the ship itself dangled beneath them like the basket of a hot air balloon, attached with several cables and a net of rigging. The reason for this design was again one of whimsy. Instead of the sleek, subtle compartment tucked flush against the outer edge of the blimp, airships designed for this new age of exploration sought to cobble together great vessels of old, literally, winding up with an aesthetic closer to that of a pirate ship dangling from a balloon. A pirate ship dangling from a balloon is how Higgs always imagined the airships, and this was because of Lottie. Though this new design predated her by several generations, it was the reason she had been allowed to take flying lessons in the first place. When Lottie had been little, she'd glued one of her birthday balloons to the hull of Higgs's toy pirate ship, snapping the 3 main masts off the toy in the process. This had so delighted their father, claiming that Lottie was showing the spirit and passion of his father, Harold Worthsome III, that he'd agreed for her to start her flying lessons that very summer. Higgs, who was more enamored with his sister's genius than the original toy, had only oohed and awed at the new pink balloon pirate ship. Unbeknownst to Lottie at the time, though she would later become an expert on the subject, her little party trick did in fact reflect the prevailing theory about venturing forth to find the fabled lost island, and it goes like this. The past is littered with the vessels of the greatest sailing nations. Emperor Qin Shi Huang's failed expeditions to find what the Chinese call Mount Penglai, the immortal realm of the gods, fleets of Wa'akaulua, the Polynesians' double-hulled voyaging canoes, ancient Greek triremes and quinquiremes, Viking longships, Swahili dhows. So, too, is it littered with sailors, some long lost, some painstakingly returned. Odysseus, Amelia Earhart, Jaume Ferret. When the Wright brothers broke new ground, pun intended, with air travel, when Russia put Sputnik into the sky, paving the way for space travel and satellites, everybody thought that finally, humans would be able to locate Atlantis. Yet still, it eluded those who sought to map it. And more to the point, the arrival of modern technology finally legitimized the skeptics who believed that everything to be discovered about our world had already been discovered, and there, quite simply, was no fabled lost land, and never had been. There were 2 families, 2 wealthy and powerful families, who still believed. The Worthsomes and the Spitzes were joined first by financing and piloting the Graf Zeppelin's famed around-the-world voyage in the 1920s. Though they could not agree on whether said journey should begin and end in America, as the Worthsomes insisted, or in Germany, the homeland and construction site of the Graf. Though the war put a damper on whimsical exploratory air travel, as well as the finances of the Spitzes, who relocated to America during those tumultuous decades, the post-war generation, coming of age in the 1950s and 60s, were not about to give up their inherited dreams of a lost land. Much like Lottie's pink balloon pirate ship, Harold Worthsome III, Lottie's grandfather, had set about to do much the same on a life-size scale. He asked himself what had all those historic sailors had in common. A certain joie de vivre, eyes turned toward the horizon, sparkling as they peered at a map, at a globe, at an astrolabe, through a telescope, at the stars. In the 1960s, Bernard, head of the new generation of Spitzes, rejoined forces with Harold, already a benefactor to the Museum of World Naval and Aviation History, located in Washington, D.C., of course. From this particular form of familial alchemy, the Bannockburn had been born. A traditional galleon, but without its 3 masts, built using historic shipbuilding techniques drawn from the greatest sailing nations of the world, and attached with steel cables to the largest and most aerodynamic Zeppelin balloon post-war Hamburg could construct. The Bannockburn was the prototype, spawning a new family of airships where the priority was to pack as much story, whimsy, and fame, what ancient Greeks called kleos, into its construction as possible. Then, and only then, Bernard and Harold believed, would they finally chart a course for the Lost Island. And it worked. Once. Higgs swung his legs off the bunk and planted his feet on the ground, then reached for the straps on his leg braces. He deftly tightened them, stretched, and then re-equipped his back brace. Though the Bannockburn was not a seaworthy vessel, Higgs could smell the ghosts of naval history's past, the salt-worn timbers that make up her interior and hull. Not only was she built using historic techniques, but the Worthsomes had bade the Museum of World Naval and Aviation History to donate planks of wood from their most famous and storied vessels. Higgs stood and stepped towards the walls of his cramped cabin, then traced his fingers along the smooth, dark wood. He didn't know which corners of history were joined together in this particular spot, but he could feel the significance oozing out of it, like stepping into a place of worship. Higgs's hand jumped back from the wood as the lightning zinged down it, like a static electric shock. He flexed his fingers, wincing, and then glared at the offending section of wall. There were letters etched into it, dug deep into the wood like magical runes. Azalaïs, je viens. Azalaïs, I'm coming. Higgs rubbed the pads of his fingers together and then yelped again. He adjusted his glasses, then examined his fingertip. A small splinter of wood poked out. He carefully flicked it away, then retrieved his satchel and made for the door. Curiosity was not something Higgs often had the opportunity to indulge in, though he was brimming with it. As worthsome skills go, curiosity was only considered valuable, in Horace Sr.'s eyes, as a means of making charming small talk at high society events, gathering intel with which to woo investors or intimidate competitors. This particular skill is not one at which Higgs excelled. Charm he certainly had, but it took rather more patience to experience Higgs's charm than most dinner party guests were willing to afford him on a given evening. And while Higgs's family and friends were accustomed to his tablet's pace of speech or themselves fluent in sign language, the average billionaire was not. As a result, Higgs had gained the reputation of being a rather uncurious, tacit, even rude person. Occasionally, Higgs could manage a single wheezing word, but it always emerged quietly, like the snuffling of a rabbit in the grass, or mortifyingly loudly, like a sneeze. It was better, in Higgs's view, to avoid speaking aloud altogether, and just let others think he was being a bit rude or that he was deaf. He had become privy to many secrets that way. But there had been a time when Higgs had dreamed of new worlds and lost islands. He had a memory, one with that hazy childhood quality to it, as though seen only in a foggy bathroom mirror, of his father telling him a bedtime story about a mythical place, where flowers glowed and magic was real, and where you could find everything you'd ever lost and get it back. But even if some fabled island could give him back what he'd lost, Higgs wouldn't know what to ask for. Feeling surprisingly light, Higgs let his curiosity take him down the hallways of the upper deck. He arrived at the ladder leading to the open air, and began to climb. It was only 10 rungs, but he grunted at the toll each took on his knees and elbows. When he reached the top, he popped his head out of the trapdoor and squinted in the sunlight. Then he yelped and cowered back down, nearly tumbling from the ladder as a knife whizzed past his head. "You good?" Lottie's head appeared in the hatch above Higgs a moment after the knife went thunk, sticking firmly into the deck. "She's trying to kill me," Higgs signed, immediately recognizing the knife and the skill with which it was thrown. He quickly reclaimed his tenuous grip on the ladder. Monty's head appeared next. He brushed Lottie's curls out of the way to peer down at Higgs. Then, above the two of them, the sharp chin and nose of Lena Spitz came into view, glaring down imperiously, another knife twirling in her fingers. Monty offered Higgs a hand as he scrambled through the hatch and onto the deck. Wordlessly, Higgs leaned gratefully on Lottie's shoulder, attempting to appear casual until the lightning subsided. "Can I help?" Monty began, but Lottie shot him a look and shook her head with a light smile. That was one way in which Higgs and Horace Sr. were in agreement, that Higgs was capable and could stand on his own. Lottie was the only exception. He didn't know what he'd do without her on this upcoming voyage. "Still alive, then?" Lena asked, slipping one knife into an unseen pocket in her sleeve and tugging the other from the deck. The last time Higgs, Lottie, and Lena had been in the same room, they were all children just on the verge of becoming teenagers, and all three acted like little adults, properly dressed with refined palates, well-behaved at dinner parties. Most importantly, all three children were highly skilled in the ability to absorb but not react to the tensions underpinning a typical Worthsome and Spitz evening, where thinly veiled threats, well-concealed weaponry, and backdoor dealings were the name of the game. Higgs hadn't realized just how adept he had become at ignoring his family's shady business dealings until his father had placed the pommel of a sword in his hand and guided him down into a dingy basement the evening of his 21st birthday. Higgs shook off the memory, a spasm of lightning arching through his hand. Lottie threw her arms around a stiff Lena was always stiff, and the two women exchanged friendly kisses to each cheek. Lena was older and stronger now, though still thin and wiry. The two women had made a point of seeing each other during Lottie's various European excursions and had become not friends so much as honorary cousins. As in her teenage years, Lena wore fitted black clothing that allowed for her customary viper-quick movements, as well as the concealment of her numerous knives. When she was younger, she wore her hair in a long blonde braid, but now it was chopped, short and sharp, at her chin, and it whipped around like the keen edge of a circular saw blade as she turned to examine Monty. He raised his hands in immediate surrender. "Whoa there," Monty grinned. "Ms. Spitz, isn't it?" "Lena." "Monty Morgan." Monty held out a hand to shake, and Lena took it with a smile. "And yes," Lottie added, "Higgs is still alive. No thanks to you. I hope you're not planning on using my brother for target practice the whole time you two are on your marvelous adventure." Lottie's tone started sweet and then turned bitter, like a shot of burnt espresso. "Daddy still trying to shackle you?" "Ugh, yes," Lottie groaned. "But don't worry, I have a plan." She intertwined her fingers with Monty's, which did not escape Lena's notice. Such things rarely did. She offered Monty additional appraisal, looking liable to draw a knife at any moment. "This fellow certainly has better cheekbones than… who was it that you're supposed to be watching some golf tournament with?" "Tennis, and I don't remember," Lottie replied. "Belgium, Spain, one of those two. Can't stand either of them." "Well, let us know how best we can kidnap you." She hoisted a duffel bag over her shoulder and effortlessly dropped down the hatch to find her cabin. "Maybe it's good we're not going on this venture," Monty murmured, elbowing Lottie in the side. "I'd be scared she was going to kill me in my sleep the whole time." "Charlotte Elizabeth Worthsome," bellowed an angry voice from the dock below. Lottie blanched. "Shoot," Lottie swore. She locked eyes with Higgs. "Dad's here." It's time to choose our next hero. Please visit the Patreon to vote on 4 character polls for free. Cycle 99 is written, created, and produced by Hannah Semmelhack. The theme song is The Boy and the Kite by Solitude. To vote on end-of-chapter and character creation polls for free, visit patreon.com/pitchpine productions. Thank you to my lovely beta readers Fiona, Aaron, and Paige, and to Basil, official lore keeper. Special thanks to Mothfella, CK, and Rainstorm. And thank you for reading, listening, and voting. May fate's 4 winds carry you back to our skies again soon.